I should have seen it coming. The seating chart at my sister Emma's wedding reception had me listed at table 12, tucked away in the back corner with distant cousins and plus ones nobody really knew. Meanwhile, Emma's college roommates who she hadn't spoken to in 3 years were seated at table 3, right next to the wedding party. But the real slap came when I arrived at the venue. The Grandview Country Club was everything Emma had dreamed of since we were kids. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the golf course. I'd helped make this dream possible, though nobody in my family seemed to remember that part. "Oh, you actually came," my mother said when she spotted me near the entrance. She was wearing a champagne-colored dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Emma wasn't sure you'd show up." I smoothed down my simple navy dress, the one I'd worn to court just yesterday. "Of course I came. She's my sister." "Well, just try not to make it about yourself today, okay?" Mom's voice carried that familiar tone of disappointed resignation. "This is Emma's day to shine." As if I'd ever tried to steal anyone's spotlight. I was the family ghost, present but invisible, contributing but unacknowledged. For the past 5 years I'd been quietly sending money home every month. Dad's construction business had been struggling, and somehow my little government job had become the family's financial safety net. Not that anyone ever thanked me for it. During the ceremony, I watched Emma float down the aisle in her $1,000 dress, the one I'd discreetly paid for after overhearing Mom on the phone with the bridal shop about payment plans. She looked radiant, and for a moment all the family drama faded away. This was my baby sister getting married. The reception started smoothly enough. Emma and Jake's first dance was picture perfect, and Dad's speech about raising strong, independent daughters earned him a standing ovation. I applauded too, even though he'd been trying to convince me to quit my phase and find a real career for the better part of a decade. That's when Aunt Patricia made her move. Patricia had always been the family's self-appointed social coordinator and moral authority. She was the one who decided which relatives were worth including in holiday photos and which ones should sit at the kids' table regardless of their age. Tonight she'd apparently decided I was a liability. "You know, dear," she said, cornering me near the bar, "perhaps you should consider leaving early. Emma mentioned she was worried you might. Well, you know how you can be." "How can I be?" I asked, genuinely curious about this character assassination. "Attention-seeking. Always trying to one-up others with your little stories about work." Patricia's smile was razor-sharp. "Tonight should be about Emma and Jake, don't you think?" I glanced around the reception. Emma was laughing with her bridesmaids, completely oblivious to this conversation. "I haven't said a word about work." "Not yet. But we all know how you get when you've had a few drinks. Suddenly your secretary job becomes this big important career." Patricia laughed, and I noticed a few other relatives had drifted closer to listen. "Really, dear, we're all adults here. We know what government clerks actually do." The comment stung because it was so precisely crafted to humiliate. Patricia had done her homework. She knew just enough about my job to sound informed while being completely wrong. But correcting her would only prove her point about being attention-seeking. "I think I'll stay," I said quietly. "Emma invited me." "Did she though?" Patricia's voice rose just enough to catch the attention of nearby tables. "Because I helped with the guest list and your invitation was more of a family obligation." The conversations around us had stopped. I could feel dozens of eyes on me waiting to see how I'd react. This was Patricia's specialty, creating public moments where you either humiliated yourself by fighting back or humiliated yourself by backing down. "You don't belong at this wedding," Patricia declared, loud enough for half the reception to hear. The entire room seemed to turn in our direction. Even the band paused between songs. Emma looked over from the dance floor, her face flushing with embarrassment, though whether for me or because of me I couldn't tell. I felt that familiar heat in my chest, the one that had driven me through law school when my professor said I wasn't aggressive enough for litigation. The same heat that had carried me through my first cases when opposing counsel tried to intimidate the little girl playing lawyer. But instead of exploding, I simply smiled and checked my watch. 8:47 p.m. Perfect timing. "I think I'll stay a bit longer," I said calmly. Patricia's eyes narrowed. She'd expected tears or anger, something she could use to further justify my exclusion. My composure seemed to throw her off balance. "Well, I suppose we can't force you to leave," she said, her voice carrying across the now silent reception hall. Though I can't imagine why you'd want to stay where you're clearly not wanted. That's when I saw him walking through the main entrance. Judge Harrison was 73 years old, dignified, and commanded respect from every lawyer in the federal courthouse. He was also my mentor, the man who'd guided my career from nervous public defender to federal prosecutor to my current position. We'd been working together on a major case, and he'd insisted on stopping by the reception after our emergency strategy session ran late. He spotted me immediately and made his way through the crowd, still wearing his formal evening suit from the judicial dinner he'd left early to help me prepare for Monday's hearing. "Your Honor," I said, standing as he approached. The effect was immediate and devastating. Judge Harrison, a man whose name appeared in constitutional law textbooks, whose decisions had shaped federal precedent for 2 decades, smiled warmly and placed a fatherly hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said, his voice carrying the authority that made seasoned attorneys nervous. "How's our star prosecutor holding up? Ready for Monday's opening arguments?" The wedding cake wasn't the only thing that dropped. Patricia's champagne flute shattered against the marble floor. Conversations died mid-sentence across the entire reception hall. Emma's mouth fell open as she stood frozen on the dance floor. "Judge Harrison," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "I'd like you to meet my family." What followed was perhaps the most satisfying 15 minutes of my life. Judge Harrison, bless him, was everything my family had never expected to meet at Emma's wedding. He spoke about the federal racketeering case I was prosecuting, mentioned my recent commendation from the Attorney General, and casually dropped that I was being considered for a federal judgeship myself. "She's being modest," he told my parents, who had materialized beside us with expressions of barely controlled panic. "Your daughter is one of the finest legal minds I've worked with in 40 years on the bench." Dad's face had gone completely pale. "Federal prosecutor?" "For the past 3 years, Judge Harrison confirmed. Though she started as my clerk right out of Harvard Law. Youngest clerk I'd ever hired, but her mind." He shook his head in admiration. "Brilliant doesn't begin to cover it." "Harvard," Mom whispered. "Full scholarship," the judge continued, apparently unaware that he was systematically destroying years of family mythology. "She was editor of the Law Review, you know. Quite the accomplishment." Patricia had been trying to edge away from the conversation, but Judge Harrison's voice carried across the reception hall. Other guests were gravitating toward us, drawn by the obvious importance of my visitor. "I hope you're all proud," Judge Harrison said, looking around at my stunned relatives. "She's prosecuting some of the most significant federal cases in the district. Just last month, she secured convictions that took down an entire money laundering operation. Saved taxpayers millions of dollars." Emma finally found her voice. "You're a federal prosecutor?" "Among other things," I said simply. Judge Harrison chuckled. "She's being modest again. Tell them about the Supreme Court brief." I felt a flush of genuine embarrassment. "It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" Judge Harrison looked scandalized. "She co-authored an amicus brief that the Supreme Court cited in their ruling last term. At 31 years old. Most lawyers never get within a mile of the Supreme Court." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma's wedding reception had become an impromptu career showcase, and I was the guest of honor nobody had seen coming. "I should let you get back to the celebration," Judge Harrison said finally. "But I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed for Monday. The defense team will come at you hard, but you're ready for them." "Thank you, Your Honor. I'll see you in court Monday morning." He squeezed my shoulder once more. "Make them earn every inch. You've built an airtight case." After he left, the reception resumed, but the energy had completely shifted. Relatives who had barely acknowledged me were suddenly eager to chat. Cousins wanted to know about my exciting career in law. Family friends asked for business cards. But it was Patricia's reaction that stayed with me. She approached me near the end of the evening, her earlier confidence replaced by something that looked suspiciously like fear. "I had no idea," she began. "No," I agreed. "You didn't. I mean, you never said, we thought you were just a secretary," I finished. "I know what you thought." Patricia fidgeted with her purse strap. "Will you? I mean, this won't affect." I studied her face, understanding dawning. Are you asking if I'll use my position to retaliate against family members who humiliated me at my sister's wedding? I didn't mean to humiliate you. I just thought. You thought wrong, I said quietly. About a lot of things. The truth was, I had no intention of using my position against my family. That would be an abuse of power, and I'd worked too hard to build my reputation to risk it on petty revenge. But I wasn't about to reassure Patricia of that fact. I think, I said, watching her squirm, that we should probably keep family dynamics and professional responsibilities separate, don't you? She nodded frantically and hurried away. Emma found me as I was getting ready to leave. I'm so sorry, Emma said, tears smudging her makeup. I had no idea Patricia would say that. I should have stopped her. I can't believe you're a federal prosecutor and I didn't even know. Emma, I said softly, touching her arm. It's your wedding day. Be happy. But you must hate us, she cried. We treated you like the family disappointment, I finished. I know. She broke down, crying harder. Why didn't you tell us? About Harvard, your job, any of it? I thought for a moment. At first, I'd wanted to prove I could succeed without their approval. Later, I stayed quiet to avoid this sudden guilt after years of judgment. Would it have mattered? I asked. If I'd told you 3 years ago I was a federal prosecutor, would you have treated me differently? Emma hesitated. Yes, she whispered. And that's terrible, isn't it? It is what it is. Will you forgive us for not seeing you? I looked around the hall. Most guests were gone, but a few still stared, curious now. Tomorrow there'd be calls, messages, and fake attempts to reconnect. There's nothing to forgive, I said. But there's a lot to rebuild. Emma hugged me tightly, still in her gown. I love you, she said. My brilliant, successful federal prosecutor sister. I love you too. And congratulations, Mrs. Martinez. That night, driving home, I thought about visibility. For years I'd made myself small, helpful, quiet, unnoticed. I'd sent money but accepted their silence. I'd let them call me a disappointment while building a career they never saw. But visibility isn't given. You have to claim it. Monday morning I walked into federal court in my best suit. Judge Harrison looked up. Ready, counselor? Ready, Your Honor, I said. And for the first time I meant it. The defense was strong, rich, confident, and experienced. But I was stronger. Harvard Law. Supreme Court citation. A prosecutor who no one underestimated anymore. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury took 4 hours to convict. That night Emma texted. Saw the news. So proud of my sister. And for once I believed her.